Hello and welcome into The Wrap, part of the Sunbelt Syndicate network of shows, I guess we're going to call it, right, TJ?
Yeah. The Wrap's a good name. I like The Wrap. You debuted the name last week. I like it. Gets the point
short,
across.
simple. Exactly. That's what I was going for. So with you from the first kick to the last pitch, as we wrapped up last season with baseball, TJ had a blast with that one because his favorite team was involved. So we knew we were going to get TJ more involved in everything going forward. Obviously, running the website is a huge help right now. If you're with us live right now, we really appreciate it because that means you've put us on a pedestal similar to that of the NFL as they kick off their first Sunday of games. So we appreciate that. For those of you watching or listening later, we also appreciate you because we are changing this up a little bit. My wife and I are going to a concert this evening. Marv was also busy. TJ had a day full of calling games. So we are all getting back into this today. Wanted to bring this to you guys before it got too late into the evening. And TJ's going to take over the hosting duties. I'm going to kind of hand it off to TJ and really start us off here in week 2.
Yeah, it's great. I get to host the show. I think my parking spot is coming soon. It's great. I love it. But yes, welcome into The Wrap. TJ O'Sullivan, Dominick Crosetto. We're going to go through week 2 of the Sun Belt slate. Artie Cat, what's going on? For those of you guys commenting, like Dom said, thank you. It's week 1 of the NFL. Don't know what you guys are doing here, but we appreciate you. Dom, just a quick overview of how the conference did in week 2. Because like you said, I was calling 3 volleyball games yesterday. You were a lot more dialed in than I was. My voice hurts. Sunbelt goes 6-8 as a conference. Just what do you take away in general from week 2, being that now we're getting into, week 1, couple SEC opponents, but now we're really getting into the power conference slate. And then you have some surprises at the FCS and low FBS levels. What's your just overall takeaway from week 2?
Yeah, well, real quick, I want to say a shout out to Artie Cat for joining us now. He was on late last night as I got invited to college football backers. They might be trying to do a weekly element like we do, but they're kind of wrapping up all of college football. And it was pretty cool that a little Sunbelt guy got invited. So Artie Cat was over there commenting on that show until I think we were on until about 1 something in the morning. So appreciate him tuning in now and back last night. But yes, I mean, we knew, TJ, you and I specifically even talked before week 2 kicked off that this weekend might not be any better than week 1, right? We knew it was a tough slate. There were going to be some really big, obvious tests. And then we had a few surprises that we didn't think were going to go the way they did, which is unfortunate. I think what we're seeing is still an element of the NIL portal era where we really, truly don't know as much as we hope we had thought we were going to know, I guess, coming into the season, right? Last year means literally 0 anymore. Cajuns were supposed to be one of the West favorites and a kind of clear favorite to win the Sun Belt. They haven't blown anybody away. James Madison, I think they're one of the better teams from the eye test at this point, but they're running the 2 quarterback system, and even their own fans are not really understanding why that is happening necessarily. So
it's an interesting situation in Harrisonburg right now.
Yes. We were texting during that game. I had a couple people texting me, what are they doing? Why aren't they going away from this? And I think the fairest point we can make and the observation we can make, and we'll talk about it more in a second when we get strictly into James Madison, but it's got to be that Barnett's not 100% healthy, right? I mean, I understand a couple trick plays here and there. A couple times you put 2 quarterbacks in the backfield to have the defense not know what's going on. Both guys could throw, both guys could run. There's a threat there. But to kind of continue it throughout the entirety of the game, switching back and forth, the old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah, it's to me, it's got to be the injury element. I just don't really have any other way to lean. I think Barnett, we learned last year, was the guy. I mean, he helped put up 70 points at UNC, was the catalyst for a lot of the offensive drives and possessions that they had last season. And he was a surprise starter in week 1, but they kind of did the same thing. But we didn't know exactly where it was going to go because the FCS opponent, fine, you're playing 2 quarterbacks, not a big surprise, kind of maybe see who stands out a little bit further or whatnot. We thought maybe Louisville, I even said this to a Louisville fan that I was talking to, is like, you won't see it the whole game, but they're definitely going to start off with it so you don't see what's coming. But I was wrong. They continued that through the entirety of the game. I guess we'll just jump right into that one, right? I mean,
I was going to say, why don't we just jump into the first game, since obviously you've got a lot to talk about. Final score, Louisville defeats JMU 28-14. But the final score does not tell the full story of this game. You know, we're talking about the quarterback packages for Sluka and Barnett, but this is a game that saw JMU take a lead into halftime, 7-6. This is a game that was tied 14-14 heading into the fourth quarter. So 2 touchdowns, 14 unanswered points in that fourth quarter. And this is also a James Madison team that had a better third down efficiency than Louisville did. They did the right things, struggled in the air a little bit, but the run game made up for it. What do you take away from this game, Dom? Is this closer game than it appeared to be in the box score, or is this does this point out some mistakes in late game situations for the Dukes?
I think, to be fair, it's probably both of what you just said. I think this is certainly a game that's closer than the score indicates, but I do think that there are a number of mistakes towards the end of this game that dearly cost them. I think the biggest thing that stands out for me as a positive for JMU is certainly that defense. That defense came to play. This Louisville offense, this is a Louisville team coming into the season that everyone thought in the ACC was either going to be there near the top or be the possible best team in the ACC. And they didn't look the part. And a lot of that is because of how JMU performed defensively. So I think a lot of credit goes to JMU's defense. The offense had its moments, right? I mean, they had that first play at the very beginning of the game. I think it was the first play. Maybe it was the second play of the night. They threw the pass out wide behind the line of scrimmage backwards. And then the halfback, or wide receiver, who I forget exactly who it was, throws it downfield to a guy who's wide open, but missed him by probably 7 yards. I mean, it really almost like he got a little too excited, a little too much air, a little too much power underneath it, when he could have really floated it to him, and they would have been up 7 very early. There was a couple other just barely misses, I feel like, on the offensive side that could have gone for big chunk yardage. So I don't think they're terribly far away, but I think they just have to be more consistent at the quarterback position. The team needs to know who they're going to rely on and count on. And let's be honest, by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, you understood that Sluka was only ever going to run a quarterback draw. I mean, he threw the ball. Let me see if I have that pulled up, unless you have it right in front of you right
I have it right here. He went 3 for 5 for 35 yards. And you're right. He did most of his damage on the ground. 21 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. He also, on one of his 2 incompletions, he threw a pick. That is the passing attack from Matthew Sluka. And I think it goes into what you said at the very top of the show. If you have 2 quarterbacks, then you have no quarterbacks. I don't know if it's necessarily I don't know if Barnett's not 100%. I don't think that personally, and I'm not a member of the James Madison coaching staff, but I would be hard pressed to believe someone telling me that they're going to let Alonzo Barnett go, especially in the non-con, which is not as important as the conference play in the overall grand scheme of your season, if he's not 100%, when you have a couple more weeks to get him ready. I think he's ready. It could be a cautious thing. You don't want to lose him for those games that matter, but I think it has more to do with the fact that they're able to get Matthew Sluka to commit to James Madison, and then Barnett's timetable moves up. And now they're in this awkward situation where they do have 2 guys who are talented enough to start on this team, and they don't want to lose either one of them. That they want to be able to use what they have. Problem is, right now, it's not quite working.
Yeah, I would say I would question the fact that you have two talented enough to start. I mean, not that Sluka can't run the ball, like you said, effective and good at doing so. 3 for 5 with one of those passes being an interception. I'm not sure he's a talented enough starter to be your every down drop back and pass it quarterback. And
Well,
I think that's what we saw
hold
there
on
Friday
before we get too far into that. There's another quarterback battle that we're going to talk about later in the East Division that I think goes into this same thing. Sluka 5 attempts in a game and a similar number in week 1. I don't know that that's enough to judge whether or not he is capable of dropping back to pass. I mean, you saw what he did. I said at the beginning of the season, we have 3 games of FBS data to determine whether or not Sluka is, a successful FBS quarterback. But
right.
at the same time, he's not getting the opportunities right now. He's being used as basically a wildcat. And I think that James Madison has some things to figure out.
Yes, I think that's the fairest way to say it. They've got some stuff to figure out. And the other dumbfounding thing that happened was George Pettaway. George Pettaway was at UNC. He was at a Power 4 school. He's not going to be scared to go against a Louisville defense. You've had success running the ball with Sluka. Why did we not see more of your number 1 running back? He was the 3rd guy down the list when you look at how many guys got carries on the night. He only went for 21 yards, but he had a long of 12. Sluka's longest run was 13. So I don't know why you don't use a talented back like that more often in a game like this. See if you could have some success. Take that pressure off of Sluka and Barnett from having to run the ball as much as they did. But yeah, anyway, I think it was a shot at a P4 that was very realistic before the game started. Looked like it was going to be a great shot up until the end. And unfortunately, they kind of let it get away, which we're going to hear kind of again later in this same episode, right?
Yeah, we are. But that is the James Madison Louisville matchup. Louisville takes that one. Box score doesn't quite tell the full story. So let's move on, I guess, to our second game. And this is our first, I would say, FCS surprise. App State gets the victory, but it's a 7-point victory over Lindenwood. 20-13, your final score. This was a game that I don't think that App State, especially coming off of the Duke's Mayo Classic, I don't think that this was a game that anyone saw being this close. But, why was it this close, especially in a sold-out crowd in Boone?
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't believe it was this close. This is, I think I've said it on the show before. We are season ticket holders. It does take us 3 hours to get to Boone. It takes us 3 hours to get back. That's a 6-hour round trip. We decided not to go to this one. Had a lot of stuff to do around the house. So part of that decision was based on the opponent. The expectation that this could be a 60-something to nothing type of game. Now you're seeing the score on your screen or hearing us say 20-13. That's it. That's all it was. And honestly, it was every bit as close as it looks. And it's shocking because App State outgained this team 502 yards to 216. I mean, Lindenwood had -1 rushing yards on the day, while App State had over 200. They had 209 exactly. Why was it close? I don't think A.J. Swan played all that terribly, really, at the quarterback position. I don't know if he played quite as well as he did in Charlotte, the Duke's Mayo Classic, but I still think he hit receivers in the hands enough times for them to make plays, and they just flat out weren't doing it. Rashad Dominick goes for, I think, what did he have, 170-some yards off the top of my head, TJ?
194.
194? Okay. But kind of like the wide receivers, he fumbled the ball twice. Yet again, just like at the Mayo Classic against Charlotte, you had a wide receiver who should have waltzed into the end zone and instead was stripped of the ball and had a touchback, just like they did against Charlotte. So sore hands really is the plain and simple answer to this. It's not huge schematics that they need to change. They were moving the ball. They just weren't getting into the end zone as much as they should have. And I will say the same problem that seemed to kind of occur last year with the defense giving up big plays at inopportune times did also happen yet again. First and second down, pretty good stops. They let them have 2 or 3, maybe 4 or 5 yards at most. So they're putting in third and medium, or maybe sometimes third and long situations. And they were allowing Lindenwood to pick up first downs in many of those situations. So they weren't getting that defense off the field to put the offense back on the field enough times. But again, moving the ball, not the worst situation. They just couldn't take advantage on the scoreboard aspect. And that was pretty shocking to see. And a lot of App fans are just not happy after that type of performance.
No, and I mean, another thing to take into consideration, you talk about mental mistakes and poor hands, but how about the mental mistakes? 9 penalties for 80 yards for App State. They were outpossessed in this game by about 10 minutes of game time. So App State just it's shocking. And I mean, you advanced to 2-0. You improved to 2-0 on the season. This one feels like, you've still got some proving to do heading into week 3.
Absolutely. You at this point, you've proved you can beat bad teams. I don't even think Lindenwood is a bad team, actually. I think they're a pretty talented team. I was surprised with some of the looks they gave and some success they had on the field. And you're right, outpossessed by almost 10 minutes with the other team having negative rushing yards. So they were successful through the air, and you can't have that against a team that their strong point coming in was supposed to be Steve Hall, their running back. He played 1 snap of the game, got hurt very early on and never touched the field again. And they couldn't do anything to run the ball without him. And he's a Walter Payton Award, early watch list kind of guy. And so he's probably their biggest single weapon. And he wasn't even a factor in this one, and they still kept it close. But Artie Cat saying the pride of St. Charles, Missouri. Sounds like a fairy tale school name. Yeah, Lindenwood. I know a lot of people had no idea. You should be paying attention. For the FCS fans out there, this is a program, I believe, that moved up very recently from Division II. Looks like they could make some noise in the FCS as they came to play. I'll tell you what, they really came to play. I think during the broadcast, they were talking about, speaking to the coaching staff before the game and said, we're coming in here to have our Michigan moment. I'm not sure App is that top of the mountain team that they used to be, but Lindenwood didn't care. They were coming in to make a name and win that game, and they almost did it.
Almost did it. And App State now, I mean, you look at this box score. A.J. Swan, 293 yards, 19 for 34, 2 touchdowns. He did have the 1 pick. Rashad Dubinion, 194 yards on 25 carries. Dalton Stroman had 3 catches for 141 yards. And then you had, I believe, Jaden Barnes had another 71. So it's not like the skill position players weren't doing what they were supposed to do.
Right.
And it's not like Lindenwood was really on paper answering, but it was just that, I guess, the mentality. Do you think coming off of a big win against Charlotte the week before, does this turn into almost like a trap game where you're looking ahead to week 3?
I really don't think they were looking ahead. If anything, I think you do look at this as like, all right, we're going to beat this team. I know the coaching staff wasn't saying that. I don't think the players are probably saying that, but I think in their heads, personally, they're probably thinking, hey, I'm going to have success today. And if you look, like you said, statistically, they did. There wasn't a whole lot that you go, wow, we didn't run the ball. We didn't pass the ball. They did, but they just couldn't show for anything at the end of it, right? Like Stroman, like you said, had a heck of a game receiving. He was the one who got stripped going into the end zone. Add one more touchdown to this game, and all of a sudden we're probably not quite talking the same way, right? A little bit more comfortable, not crazy, but, add 2 more touchdowns, it's really not much of a factor. Yeah, they didn't win as big as people thought. I mean, they were like a 35 and a half point favorite. So obviously Vegas saw something and they didn't meet up to those standards, but, like you said, the most important thing, 2-0, moving on to week 3. However, week 3, Southern Miss. It is a conference game, so they better start firing on all cylinders as they travel down to Hattiesburg next weekend to play a night game at the other stadium called The Rock. So the battle of the 2 black and gold teams battle of the two teams that call their stadiums the Rock. I mean, it's going to be a great time to be down there in Hattiesburg with all the pomp and circumstance heading into that one.
Absolutely. App State got some things to figure out after the win over Lindenwood. And one more thing that I want to bring up, you look at the defense and maybe you think maybe it's the defense if the offense is clicking on all cylinders. They had 16 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. Defense did what they were supposed to do as well. Caused 2 interceptions. Just baffling the way that the final score comes out. But App State does get the win. They are 2-0 on the season. And now we head into our first power conference opponent of the slate, and it is Troy taking on Clemson. This one looks like it's a little bit larger of a deficit. It's a 2-score game. But this is a game where Troy had it looked like they had firm control heading into halftime. What a first half by the Trojans.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was kind of one of those weird games that weather did play a factor. However, it didn't seem to play a factor till much later. So Troy was up, had a weather delay, not quite halftime. So I said to some people, man, that weather delay is only going to favor Clemson, right? They're the home team. They get to go in there. Coaching staff says, hey, guys, wake up. We're losing to this team. This is not what we expect. This is not what the fans came out here to see. Bam, they come out on fire, right? Didn't happen. That weather delay seemed to only favor the Trojans as they scored again after it came back. Clemson looked like they were going to go into half with no points, somehow got 3. Looked like they had gotten 10 total. They actually got into the end zone with like a minute or so to go. Turns out the wide receiver had caught the ball with his knee on the ground, and it ended up being called down after a review at the 8 or 9 yard line, which ended up, I'm sorry, they were supposed to have 7. If that was the case, they ended up having to kick the field goal, which had them end up with 3. So it was a great game, great first half for the Trojans, and they earned every second, right? It wasn't that Clemson played a whole lot of mistake-type football to get into this game, and the Trojans were lucky to be up 16. They were dominant. They were clearly dominant. The defense was flying all over the field from sideline to sideline. They looked like the better team. If you would have switched jerseys and told me that's Clemson and that's Troy, I'd have said, okay, that's what a lot of people probably would have expected. So I absolutely think they earned every second of that first half. They weren't given anything. Nothing went their way call-wise, especially late in the game. But they didn't do themselves any favors, had a couple of questionable things. They did do a fake field goal, which turned out to be pretty ugly, which gave Clemson the ball back and didn't have any points on the board. Obviously, they ended up scoring more than that anyway. Had the field goal gone, they would have, 27-19 doesn't look much different than 27-16. But, does that turn the tide in the moment when you do that? And you got to question, if the mindset changes had you kick that field goal. Because I believe at that point they might have been able to go back up on the scoreboard or cut the lead down to a very minimal amount. But, I mean, Tay Meadows.
You hit that field goal. It's a 1-score game. It's an 8-point game.
8-point conversion. That's okay. Yeah, I would say Tay Meadows though is the real deal. Very impressed with what he's done in week 1 and week 2 so far, and I think this Troy team is for real. I know I referenced the Troy boys talking on their podcast before the season started. They didn't seem very high up on their team, and I had them being one of the better teams in the West. Not the top team in the West, but one of the better teams in the West. And after this type of performance, I'd be hard-pressed to find a Troy fan who doesn't think they're going to do really well in Sun Belt Conference play now.
Yeah, I think that you're talking about a Troy team. This is a top 10 opponent. I think a lot of people will, I think there are too many fans that look at this game and say, oh, well, they lost because they were supposed to lose. This is a top 10 nationally ranked opponent that you are leading 16-3 at half. And granted, Clemson scores 24 unanswered points on you in the second half, and it just is what it is. There are some things that I think Troy needs to figure out mentally more than anything is how do you continue through the break? there could have been a situation where they're up 16-3. They're sitting in that locker room and they're like, oh my God, what we're up 16-3 against the number 8 team in the land. Like that's very possible that that's something that happens. So now I think it's about finishing games, because you look at the drives in the second half. Clemson comes out, scores a touchdown on 8 plays. Troy throws a pick. One play, one more touchdown for Clemson. Next drive, interception. To end the third quarter, Clemson hits a field goal. Then you have the turnover on downs that you're talking about, the fake field goal. Then you have another touchdown for Clemson, and Troy's forced to punt. It is a dismal 4 drives in the second half for Troy.
Yes.
Very tough way to end that game. But other than that second half, Goose Crowder played pretty well. I think he on paper, you take away those 3 interceptions, of course. If you take away interceptions from both of these quarterbacks, he's going step for step with Cade Klubnik. And Cade Klubnik is
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if you go back and look at the interception, at least the one specifically, that gave Clemson a very short field, he hits, a contested ball with his wide receiver. It goes up into the air. Kind of everybody loses it. Defensive back from Clemson is coming in for the tackle. It actually ends up hitting the Clemson player on the ground, hits off his backside, his butt, bounces up into the air. The DB dives and intercepts the ball. Meanwhile, the Troy wide receivers turn around like, I don't even know what just happened. Where the ball went, nothing. So, that one, to me, it's hard. We've talked about this before. That's one of those interceptions I don't put on the quarterback. He put it into a pretty good position. The catch wasn't made. All of a sudden, something weird happens. Now it's intercepted. They're
out of
within
his control.
the 30. Yeah, the 30-yard line immediately on that turnover. So that's tough, because I think Goose really played a good game. Fundamentally sound. His completion percentage was pretty good. His QBR doesn't come out good. Again, I don't really like the QBR stat. It doesn't tell you enough. I mean, neither. Crowder's got 54.4 and Klubnik's got 42.8. So if you want to go by that and say there proves Goose was the better quarterback, you could do that. But neither one is good, right, in your QBR. So I don't really like that vantage point, but I thought Goose played an excellent game overall. And, the running game for Clemson got going late, and that's what gave them the advantage, if you ask me, right? Once Randall got going on the ground late in the game, goes over 100 yards, gets 112 yards and a touchdown on the end. That 30-yard run was kind of a real killer real late in the game there. So I don't think Troy's far away. I don't know if something's wrong with Clemson, right? I mean, they were supposed to be one of the best teams in the country. I'm not quite sure I see that. But, this is probably still a top 25 team that they went toe-to-toe with.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. 27-16 is the final. Troy, I think you and I are in agreement. Troy's going to be one of the serious contenders in the West this year, based off of their 2 performances, especially being able to go to a top 10 opponent and put the performance that they had in the first half together. I think that's what you take away from this game. At some point, Dabo Swinney's going to be able to get his guys together, and the defense showed up in the second half. I think that's what you take away from this game. So we move on to, we'll be pretty quick with this next one, I think. It was pretty typical Alabama coming off of a loss sort of performance here. I don't think it's anything that has to do with ULM. There's nothing that jumps off the page at you, of course. But this is an Alabama team that lost to Florida State, got embarrassed by Florida State, and I'm sure that there were plenty of choice words used in the locker room leading up to this week 2 matchup. So is there anything you want to say about this game?
ULM got paid $1.9 million to take the loss.
There you go.
That's probably the biggest factor.
That's the biggest win of the day.
Biggest win of the day. Yeah. Cody Slavinsky's put that out in his recap article that if it's not quite published yet, will be soon. But yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway. It's unfortunate that ULM has the shutout to start the year. looking good defensively, has our defensive player of the week and the Sun Belt player of the week officially as well. But now they come into an Alabama team, like you said, TJ, just to rehash it real quick, they're pissed off, right? You caught Alabama at like the worst possible time. So yeah, we expected a loss here if we have to be fair and accurate as kind of the reporting side of things. But we were hoping for a little bit more of a competitive game. Unfortunately, Alabama was really mad, and they took it out on the Warhawks, and it's unfortunate. But 73-0, yikes!
Yeah.
But Artie Cat saying, yeah, they need the money.
Yeah, they do, and they got it. Yeah, this is, like you said, worst time ever to catch Alabama, other than maybe Nick Saban coming off of an upset loss. Like this was just to put this into perspective. This is, coming off of a week where a lot of people are all of a sudden saying Kalen DeBoer is not the guy. So yeah, Alabama showed up to play. There's really nothing else that you can say about this game.
The only other thing is, as Ben points out, did you see the ULM punter clothesline the returner from Alabama? That
I did see that.
Amazing. This guy, he's got to be an Australian rules punter, right? I mean, like, the guy came over from Aussie or something? Otherwise, I'm not sure. Let's see. Special teams. Yeah, I think it was Mackenzie Ryan, Australia. Amazing tackle. First of all, this guy's coming with all kinds of speed right at him. He kind of misses like the hit, really, if you really look at it, but grabs enough of him, and then just literally the guy is horizontal in the air and then just gets put down to the ground by the forearm and bicep of this punter. I mean, it was beautiful. It was a pretty cool hit to see. Unfortunately, it came from the punter. If I'm Brian Vincent, I might be thinking, you want to try a little middle linebacker for us or something? I mean, this guy wasn't letting this guy get around, so maybe he's playing the wrong spot.
Gets the job done.
The JBL clothesline from hell. Yeah, that's a great that
WWE
is exactly
reference.
Yeah, and it looked like a WWE clothesline. I mean, he didn't backflip and fake it. It just he didn't let go. He literally had him at the clothesline and then just took him down to the ground. It was impressive stuff. So if you haven't seen that, go find it. It was a great play to watch. Unfortunately, it was probably the best play for the Warhawks all day. So like you said, TJ, I think that one wraps that up.
Yeah. That's about all we can say about that game. Alabama came to play. But on a higher note, our next game, Texas State taking on UTSA in the I-35 rivalry. You can check out the recap for this game on sunbeltsyndicate.com. Kyle Nashheim does a really nice job wrapping it up. Bobcats get the win, improved to 2-0. Final score 43-36. And this one was a shootout, Dom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes you see these scores and you say, oh, it looks like it was a shootout. But what happened was one team jumped up and then another team came back. No, this was a back and forth affair the entire time. As Coach G.J. Kenny said before the week even started, not sure why this game isn't elevated to a regular ESPN or ESPN2, maybe even an ESPNU platform instead of being stuck on ESPN Plus, because this is a game that everyone should have watched. It was just extremely entertaining football. Back and forth affair, good plays on both sides of the ball from both teams. Both Sparks had a really disappointing week after last week, right? You go from 4 touchdowns to 1. Absolutely incredible to have a letdown like that. Just kidding. That's sarcasm. He still had 155 yards and averaged 31 yards per catch. So, yeah, he didn't find the end zone quite as much as last week. Still, phenomenal athlete, phenomenal player, making plays all over the field. Chris Dawn Jr. also goes over the century mark for the Bobcats. He doesn't find the end zone, but he did have a 56-yard catch for his long of the day. So, again, a shootout, big explosive plays all over the field. UTSA running back Robert Henry Jr. was one that in the preview we were looking out for had a 75-yard touchdown run. So again, this is what people come to see. They want to see the offense. They want to see a shootout. They want to see points. This had it all. And luckily for the Bobcats, for Texas State, for Sunbelt fans, they've got the trophy coming back to San Marcos. Really impressive victory. The first time they've won on the road in the Alamo Dome in this rivalry ever. And the first time they've had 2 straight wins against UTSA like this. A good way for them to kind of go out of the Sun Belt on top of a heated rival there.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing for anybody who, went on to DraftKings and bet on the first score of this game being a safety, you guys won big. That was something big that stood out to me. First drive for UTSA ends in a safety. You couldn't get much better of a start for the Bobcats. No. Take a look at some of the stats. Lincoln Perry, 71 yards and a touchdown, 175 yards overall as a team on the ground for Texas State, 4 touchdowns on the ground. Brad Jackson did really well.
Yes.
You're looking at 60% completion rate, 286 yards, averaged 14.3 yards per pass. That's a big one for Jackson. Had a touchdown and a pick. Outperformed UTSA quarterback Owen McCown. This was just an overall really good game for Texas State. And, I guess that poses the question to UTSA. We know that UTSA is one of the better names in G5 football, but they are 0-2 this season. So
True.
Does that sort of, sway your opinion of, was this truly a great win for Texas State, or is this a down year for UTSA? Like, how do you view this win for Texas State?
Yeah. Well, we'll touch on Artie Cat's comments first, and then I'll get into that. A win with some sloppy play, some dumb penalties, still need to stop. 3rd biggest crowd in history there at the Alamo Dome. He also didn't like the star helmet. Not sure where that came from. I disagree. I actually really like the star helmet they wore. So we'll disagree a little bit there. I like how Texas State's not afraid to mix it up and get involved with that. I will say UTSA 0-2, but I still think this is a good, talented team. I don't think Owen McCown is a superstar quarterback who's going to end up in the NFL, like the namesake he comes from necessarily. But they have a really talented running back in Robert Henry Jr. They've got some good wide receivers, some good tight ends. So this was still a very big test. And I think the Bobcats are really, this is a game that meant more than just a one-off game, right? This is the intensity, the rivalry. It's close by. It had everything. It meant everything to both teams. And to come out on top, it doesn't matter kind of what the record is. But I still think UTSA is going to do fairly well in the American this year. So I think this is a big win. It kind of puts the Bobcats up there, maybe towards the top of the Sun Belt West early, with the Cajuns not necessarily performing. No one else really truly standing out at the top so much. Might be the Bobcats' year as they kind of exit the Sun Belt.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I wanted to get your answer before I gave mine. I think this is a very big game for Texas State. I think that UTSA, you look at the 0-2 record, that doesn't mean anything. This is a really good Bobcats squad, and this is a UTSA team that, while they did lose, they put 24 points up on Mike Elko's defense at Texas A&M. So that is something to take into consideration. It's a pretty bad 1-2 punch in weeks 1 and 2 for the Roadrunners. They'll have a chance to, they're probably going to be looking to beat up on Incarnate Word a little bit in week 3. And then they go into their conference schedule. So, I think that this is a big win for Texas State. We'll see what ends up happening with Texas State next week, but let's move into our next game. Move right along. This was one that we had circled. Arkansas State, Arkansas, and you look at that final score, it doesn't look great. This one's a little bit closer than people realize, just in the first half. Arkansas State was able to move the ball on this Arkansas team. I don't know. What do you take from this? Maybe I'm maybe I'm overhyping this a little bit, being as though the first quarter ended 28-7 Arkansas,
Yeah,
but
I
I'd,
think
you know,
I think
give me
maybe
your thoughts.
yeah, I think maybe so, but not by a lot, because I think what the bigger aspect of this is what this game meant to the state of Arkansas, the people on both sides of the fence here. For whatever reason, Arkansas has adamantly refused to play Arkansas State and give them a shot, a real true shot. This is, as Ben James said earlier, possibly the last game at War Memorial for Arkansas to play in. The contractually obligated is done. Now it'll be up to as he says, it's up to the governor if Arkansas plays at War Memorial again. So we'll see if that happens. I don't want to get back to it because he had some good ones. He said he was just happy that A-State scored versus Arkansas, but he was talking some big game. He thought he was.
I was gonna
see an
say
upset
he
early.
really changed his tune.
Yeah,
I
he
believe
did.
the term was dog walked.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I think that was exactly it. He says there was a couple calls that didn't go or it didn't get called against the Razorbacks. Costly mistake on defense and offense with Rainer forcing passes. At least we scored versus an SEC opponent. Yeah, you just want to see a little bit more, a little bit better, especially when you're coming into this conference with, hey, could we have a real shot at winning the Sun Belt West? We've got Jalen Raynor coming back. We've got Corey Rucker at the wideout position. The defense needed some work, but we think we've retooled that, the all-new defensive staff. And then you come out here and you lose 56-14 against an in-state opponent that you wanted a shot at for a very, very long time. I think this was more about, again, the state, the people getting together. As Artie said, there was 54,000 people inside War Memorial. Ben's also saying that now too. It's a game between two teams that need to play more often. Does it have to be yearly? No. You probably don't even want it to be yearly because then it loses a little bit of its luster. But there's no reason that it should have been over like 100 years before these teams finally played each other. So I don't know why that happened so long like that. Raynor just, didn't have enough on the day. Completion percentage wasn't bad, but he only had 125 yards, averaged 3.8 per pass, which is pretty low. 1 touchdown, but 2 interceptions. He was almost more successful on the ground, not in yardage, but just in efficiency. But it just wasn't enough, and it wasn't going to be enough to beat this really, really powerful. I think this is a very underrated Arkansas team in the SEC as well. So I don't think they lost to a bad opponent whatsoever. I think it's kind of the expected outcome, as unfortunate it is to say that.
Yeah, this is an Arkansas team that a lot of pundits are pretty high on because not only do you have a coach situation there in Sam Pittman where there's a pretty split crowd on whether or not they think he should keep his job, but this is an Arkansas team where Taylon Green went completely under the radar. Taylon Green is as dual threat as they come. 4 touchdowns, 239 yards. He was obviously the passing leader as the quarterback, but he was also the rushing leader with 151 yards and a touchdown on 9 carries. This is a guy who's going to be in conversations for postseason awards. So I think that this Arkansas team is just a lot better, like you said, than people give them credit for in the preseason. Not much you can really say. But yes, like you said, would like to see these two play again. It was too long for the first time. Sam Pittman also said at SEC Media Days, he kind of threw some shade at Arkansas State. He said, ask the next guy in like 80 years, if they can play again. But I don't know. That's we'll see what that turns into, if that stokes any fire.
I hope so. But yeah, I think it's just good for the natural state, as Arkansas is known as. But Ben James, another little note, Cross has officially announced that he's done and out for the season. That's a big loss for them. Don't think it would have changed the tides in this game at all. But yeah, hopefully he comes back for a redo next year, as Ben James said, and they can use his ability for sure.
All right, let's go into our next game. Southern Miss defeats Jackson State University 38-20. Huff gets his first win in Hattiesburg as the new head coach. Let's take a look at the box score really quick. You've got Braylon Braxton, 214 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns, 20 for 30, so 66% completion rating. He adds another 20 yards on the ground. Jeffrey Pittman led the way in rushing, 71 yards. Just 1 touchdown on the ground for the Golden Eagles. And Jackson State kept things close, relatively close. You look at this game, and this is not Deion Sanders Jackson State. This is an FCS opponent without that big name head coach. Now, how impressive is this win for Huff?
I still think it's an impressive victory overall. I mean, it's nothing to write home about. You're not going to talk about it nationally or anything like that, but regionally, it still meant a lot. Jackson State, even though Deion's gone, still has a lot of pride and prestige in their program. They still expect to win their games, especially at the FCS level. They came into this one having won their last 11 games, dating back to last season, as spoken about in our preview article for this game. So this was a team, still got a lot of talent. Jacoby Morgan is a pretty good quarterback at the FCS level. Didn't have a great completion percentage, didn't have a ton of yards, but didn't have a ton of mistakes. 1 interception on the day, still pretty good threat for that team, but they were really successful on the ground, which if you're an FCS team going into a game like this trying to compete, you have to be efficient and successful on the ground to stay in a game like this where the other team could probably score a little bit more than you, probably possess the ball a little bit more than you. So the best way you even this out is having that run game, and they definitely had that because really Southern Miss kept their passing game in check. So it's really Jackson State slowing this game down a little bit successfully that kept this one close and kept this one a little bit of a battle late into this game before they really started to make sure they were going to win this one.
Well, let's take a look now. 2 weeks in, let's take a look at Southern Miss. Artie Cat said Southern Miss doesn't look too good, but let's take a look at these 2 games, right? You've got Mississippi State. This is a Southern Miss team that went into halftime down 13-10 and then ends up getting doubled up. The final score of that game is 34-17. Now you're talking about a game with Jackson State, 38-20. This is a team where people are very split, right? The media says this team was 1-11 last season. There are some of us that say this is a team that is being taken over by the guy who just won the chip last year and brought his entire team with him. So I think there's a lot of unknown with this Golden Eagles team. Where do you see this team ending up now, having seen them go against a team that they shouldn't beat and a team that they should beat?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question because there is the thought process. This is not the same team as last year, but where are they? And I think this team, I believe I had them about 6-6, and I think that's kind of where they're going to be. I think they're going to look probably good or better than they should in a few games, and they're going to have a few letdowns. This may be kind of one of those letdown games, but they still won the game. Last year, had they had a letdown game like this, they probably would have lost. Here's the stuff that's positive, right? Interceptions thrown for Southern Miss, 0. Penalties, 4 of them for 43 yards. So this team's not making a lot of boneheaded mistakes and costing themselves dearly, but they're new, right? The chemistry's not there. The coaching staff's got to learn exactly what they have in some of these guys that they're not as familiar with. This is only week 2. Like you said, they had an SEC opponent in week 1. We've got a tough FCS opponent. I don't think Jackson State, maybe not the premier FCS teams, but right below them at the very least. I think they'd be a top, and I think they still are, a top 25 team in the FCS at this point. So this is not a bad team to get another test against. That's not quite, your practice walkthrough. This is a game situation, but guys who are going to come and try and win this game, especially regionally. So I think this team is certainly much better than last year, but are they elite? Are they a West Conference, West Division favorite? No. And I don't think they should be, not yet. They haven't shown enough to prove that. Like Artie Cat says, maybe they weren't all that impressive to him in the eye test. I just don't think they're firing on all cylinders. I think they could get there towards the end of the season and be a lot more improved than what we're seeing currently on the field right now.
Well, like we mentioned, taking on App State in Hattiesburg on the Rock. Like this is a big time game next week, 7 o'clock on ESPN Plus. That'll be a big game, I think, for both of these teams that are in similar situations. Not quite sure where App State's at. Not sure where the Golden Eagles are. So big game for both teams next week. Just look at that. What in the world happened here with Marshall? Missouri State, the newest member of FBS, comes into Huntington, West Virginia, and pulls off the upset, 21-20. Marshall falls to 0-2. What in the world happened?
Yeah. I wish I had a really, really good answer for you. This was a game that Marshall fans thought they would have an FCS type opponent because that's kind of where they came from, right? Like this was an obvious win, get them back on track. The Georgia game was tough and a rough look, but that wasn't really an unexpected outcome. Even the guys on the Thundercast are going to tell you, we never expected to beat Georgia. Would they like to shock the world? Sure. It wasn't a realistic outcome before the game started, and it certainly wasn't one during the game or after when you saw what really transpired. But this game was supposed to be different. This game was supposed to have a lot more success. You're at home. Tony Gibson's expected to get his first win as a Thundering Herd coach. But, you know, it really wasn't impressive. Zion Turner gets the start, stays at quarterback the whole game, goes only 13 of 24 for 83 yards. Didn't even throw for 100 yards. That's pretty shocking for a quarterback at the Division I level to not throw for over at least 100 yards. Average was only 3.5, no touchdowns, 1 interception. There's where a lot of your problem lies right now. Why aren't we seeing another quarterback if we're not having success with that guy? Carlos Del Rio Wilson was on the sideline dressed, with his helmet on quite a few times, didn't get put into the game. Not really sure what's happening there. A little bit banged up, a little bit injured, or if Turner showed enough in the Georgia game that they just wanted to stick with him and tell him he's the guy moving forward. You had 2 Doak Walker candidates at the running back position coming into the season. I don't think you're going to see either of those names on that list moving forward. They just really haven't shown that they could be on that list. They don't seem to be 2 of the best running backs in the country as they were thought of coming in. And part of that's the offensive line not being dominant enough to open up the gaps for them. But yeah, it just, I mean, the other thing we have to say is we have to give credit to the opponent. I think Missouri State is a pretty decent team. I don't think that they're a bad team. I don't think it was unlucky. Their quarterback, Jacob Clark, goes for 359 and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, there's a guy who's getting it done. And bottom line is quarterback position for the Herd, it hasn't been good enough yet. And it doesn't look like it's anywhere close, if we have to be honest. So that's a rough look.
Well, you beat me to what I wanted to talk about, which was the quarterback situation for Marshall. This was the East Division team that I was referring to when we were talking about James Madison at the top of the show. You have a situation where in Georgia, first of all, let's go back to media days, right? We've got Tony Gibson standing up there in front of the Sunbelt media for the first time, and he says Carlos Del Rio Wilson is the starting quarterback for Marshall, at least at this moment. And then you start, and the majority of what I heard was it was Marshall's quarterback situation. It was a battle mainly between Carlos Del Rio Wilson and Zion Turner. And then Ja'Kai Long starts the Georgia game. So not to say that none of those guys are deserving, but like it didn't even seem like Marshall was sure of where that quarterback situation was. Ja'Kai Long starts that game. He goes 3 for 11. He comes in. He goes out at the end of the first half, and Del Rio Wilson comes in. He only gets 3 attempts for 10 yards, and then he doesn't play the rest of the game. Ja'Kai Long comes in to start the second half, and then it's Zion Turner the rest of the way. So then you go Zion Turner the entire way against Missouri State, and he throws for 83 yards. So I guess now the question is, because Carlos Del Rio Wilson, it doesn't seem like he's getting a whole lot of opportunity here. And this is a guy who was originally an SEC commit to Florida. So what's going on with this Marshall quarterback situation? Do you have any thoughts on this at all?
I mean, I will say from what we saw in the Georgia game, I was fine with giving Turner the start here in this game. But I'm with you, and I think I don't know if you spelled it out exactly, but I think you alluded to it. Like, hey, we're not getting it done, right? Let's get somebody else in here and see what happens when we change this up. I mean, in other sports, like the goalie in hockey lets in 2 quick goals. Well, it might have been that the defense was terrible, but we're going to change up the goalie to see if it sparks something else in the entire team. So when you change a quarterback, it doesn't mean that quarterback isn't good, but it could be that, hey, it's not working and we need to do something to change up the team. You can't change every single guy on the line, right? I mean, I guess technically you can, but you don't want to do something like that. You want to make one change that has a bigger effect. That's the quarterback position. So I'm not sure why that either wasn't done or they're just not doing it, because you look at that statistical line for Turner, and as decent of a look as he had when he came into that Georgia game late, I just don't know why he wasn't replaced in this one. Again, doesn't mean he's not the guy again next week, maybe, but you're not moving the ball on this upstart FBS newcomer. So we need to see if somebody else can do it. That's basically what I'd say if I'm a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, this is I gotta continue to campaign for the Syracuse transfer, Carlos Del Rio Wilson. I think that he needs more opportunities. I've seen him play in person. I've seen him play at the Dome. He's never really had the keys to the car. He's never had the opportunity. He's playing behind 6th-year quarterback Garrett Schrader in 2023. 2024, he's playing behind he's hurt, first of all, but he would have been playing behind Kyle McCord, and at Florida he's playing behind Anthony Richardson. So you've got a guy who finally has the opportunity, and he's got all the talent. He's just had better talent in front of him. He's had 3 NFL quarterbacks in front of him. I don't know. I don't know what you could have seen if at media days he's truly the front runner, unless it was a ruse, unless it was just to throw people off that he just announced that, which I don't think he would do that to Carlos Del Rio Wilson, listening to that from Huntington. But I just don't know what you see in those 2 weeks that really just says he's the third option. Ja'Kai Long started game 1. Zion Turner started and played the entirety of game 2. So that tells me that he's the third option. I don't know how you go from top to bottom in like 2 weeks.
No.
But I think that Tony Gibson just continuing to figure some things out. It's a shocker. And now they've got a week to figure something out. They go into week 3, 0-2. They're going to face Eastern Kentucky. So hopefully, Eastern Kentucky, Middle Tennessee are their next 2 games before they start their Sun Belt slate. So they've got 2 games to figure some things out, especially at that quarterback position.
Yeah. Shout out to college football backers real quick, resharing the stream. We're going to see a lot more between the 2 of us. They do a little bit coverage of the big guys. So if you've got some outside interest in them, go check out their stuff as well. Back to you, TJ.
Absolutely. Well, let's get off of this graphic, because this graphic makes me sad. This graphic makes me happy. 54-6. What a performance by Old Dominion. The Monarchs defeat. Excuse me. They might as well have deleted the North Carolina Central Eagles. That's just a one-sided performance right there. Colton Joseph, 257. With 3 touchdowns. Just a heck of a performance for him. 19 for 24, 5 incompletions on the day. That is a pretty good sign for your starting quarterback. It's also a pretty good sign when your starting quarterback is the second highest rusher with 52 yards, and your first guy with only 5 carries is Traquan Jones, 163 yards and 3 touchdowns, not to allude to anything or give anything away, but you might be seeing his name in an upcoming article that we'll be releasing either tonight or tomorrow. I don't know. I can neither
Wink,
confirm nor
wink.
deny. I just run the website.
Hey,
What do you got?
hey,
What do you
look what
got
I've
from
done.
this game? Oh, there you go.
Well,
Look at that. He's he didn't
ODU shout
even
out.
tell me he's actually currently campaigning for Traquan Jones right now.
There you go.
Dom, what do you got? Is there anything other than ODU put on one heck of a performance to say about this one?
No, nothing really shocking here. NC Central, a local team to me here in Durham, North Carolina, just down the road. They are an FCS team, but they came up from the Division II level, kind of within the last decade or so. They have never beaten an FBS opponent. So to have ODU having lost this game would have been a pretty big shock to me. I did talk to a Central fan. We kind of compared some notes. They don't do anything real great. Didn't really blow anybody away offensively. Defensively, probably decently successful at their own level. They weren't about to step up and keep ODU in check. I'm glad to see Colton Joseph go off on the passing thing, right? We knew he's a great runner. He had a lot of success on the ground against Indiana, not necessarily through the air. He really got into a rhythm in this one, though. So very impressive performance all the way around, even adding those 52 yards as well on the ground. No shocker here. ODU did what they're supposed to do at home. A great home opener there, 54-6. And yeah, as Artie Cat said, fantastic uniforms. Hard to beat the light blue. The light blue with the dark blue, it just works. And ODU does it phenomenally. The helmet was also a great look. And this is ODU's old, I think they call it like the race car logo, because it kind of got like the track.
Yeah.
So one of my favorites, I had to pick this shirt up when I was there, I think 2 years ago now. But a great stadium, too. I had told my friend who's an NC Central fan, I was like, you're going to enjoy the place. ODU's got a very nice stadium. For those of you who in the Sun Belt who haven't been there and you get a game in Norfolk, I would suggest go checking it out. They got a nice scene over there.
Something I appreciate about the uniforms, just to go back to that for a second, is the light blue's a trim, right? Usually you see teams kind of get into the habit of, if our two colors are this and this, one of these two has to be the uniform. The light blue is just such a clean look.
Yes.
But anyway, does this game, I know that, we kind of just said this is just a great performance by ODU. Does it tell us anything, or does it just say they're ready now after, maybe dropping the ball against Indiana a little bit?
I think it tells us a little bit. I don't think it tells us a ton. Again, the biggest thing it tells us is Colton Joseph
tells you what they're capable of.
Right. He can be a threat both on the ground and through the air, right? That was kind of the question coming into the year. He had a lot of success on the ground. He needs to step up the throwing game, the accuracy, the completion percentage. That type of thing is happening. The other part of that it does help answer a little bit is the receiving core. Had a little bit more questions there than the running back. As you said, Traquan Jones, we don't got an issue at running back. The guy's phenomenal. It's going to be a great player. Now it was, what does the wide receiver room look like? They're going to be successful here with Colton Joseph getting them the ball. They just need to pick up the chemistry. This is exactly the type of game that they needed to have to do that before they hit their stride in Sun Belt play. I still think ODU is going to be a team that you're looking at towards the top of the East at the end of this season. That dark horse run doesn't look so dark anymore after what we've seen from the teams in the East.
Yeah, absolutely. ODU, biggest margin of victory for a Sun Belt team in week 2. Almost forgot how many weeks there were for a second there. Yeah, big performance for ODU. Back to the losing column for the Sun Belt. Unfortunately, Georgia State drops this one against Memphis, 38-16. Big story throughout the week was the official commitment of TJ Finley to Georgia State. He returns to the Sun Belt after getting in a little bit of legal trouble. Charges are dropped against him, so he's finally able to go and join Georgia State with Del McGee. Both quarterbacks, TJ Finley and Cameron Brown, get some time in this one. Finley gets most of it. He goes 21 for 29 with 201 passing yards, a pick, and no touchdowns, excuse me. Cameron Brown plays significantly less, but he goes 8 for 12, 139, and a touchdown, no picks. Do you have a preference, or do you have a way that you're leaning on these two quarterbacks? Is Finley the answer for Georgia State?
Yeah, I think Cameron Brown got the start. That wasn't a surprise. TJ Finley, it isn't even got, a whole lot of time to practice with this team. But I think that's the biggest thing that I got out of this game specifically. Sure, he doesn't throw a touchdown, but look at that completion percentage, 21 of 29, more yards through the air. Does have the interception, but again, he's probably trying to garner a comeback here, make this into a game. He's probably pushing the ball a little bit. I didn't see his interception specifically, so that's why I have to kind of generalize it. But he's got Ted Hurst on his side. Ted Hurst went off for 97 yards on 7 receptions. So he's got some weapons he can use there. The ground game is the stuff that's seeming to struggle for the Panthers so far. Haven't really gotten that going in either game. You get the ground game going a little bit, they're going to be forced to respect the passing game more. And TJ Finley, as we said with the completion percentage, he's going to be able to lead that team. I mean, what is he? 6'5", 6'6". He's a big, tall quarterback. He's not a mobile quarterback. He's not really a dual threat type of guy. 7 carries for -9 yards against this Memphis Tigers team. So you don't really want him having to do that. But he can see over that tall offensive line of his, and he can get the ball downfield, and he's got the arm to do it. We've seen him do it at a couple different destinations. So he can do it for Georgia State. This is the type of guy that they need to lead a program. He's got the kind of seniority and age gap probably at this point by being in college for, 7 years? Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to come out of this. But I also think they were a little bit more competitive than a lot of people thought they'd be coming into this one against Memphis. Is Memphis still considered widely as one of the better G5s in the country? Pretty competitive game there on 38-16, a much better showing than they had in week 1 against Ole Miss.
Yeah, to your point, I think it's almost sacrilegious that Georgia State hasn't figured out their rushing attack. With Tucker Gregg and Darren Granger being such prevalent names in Atlanta for Georgia State. But yeah, I think that you've got. I wouldn't hold the pick too harshly against Finley. I think that both quarterbacks play well. They do what they're supposed to do, and they make the most out of their opportunities. This is, like you said, a really good Memphis team. And now Georgia State. Next week, will head to, or they'll stay home, and they'll host Murray State before going to Nashville to take on Vanderbilt. And then it is conference play for Georgia State. So Del McGee still has some time to figure things out. 2 tough opponents in week 1 and 2. And now time to figure some things out against Murray State.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit more to figure out. Artie Cat mentions TJ Finley did go into the locker room asking if he was injured. I don't have any insider info on that, but I'll definitely look into that and see if we can find something definitive.
Yeah,
I did not see anything come out, but
yeah, I don't have anything on that either. I think we'll just have to wait until the Monday coach's availability to figure that out.
Yep.
Next one, Tulane, South Alabama, heartbreaker for the Jaguars. Tulane coming in. This is a John Summerall return to the Sun Belt. His Green Wave now. He was the Troy head coach, of course, and now he's with the Green Wave. He also picked up in this offseason Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback for BYU last season. So they end up going to South Alabama, and South Alabama loses a really close one. What do you have from this one?
Yeah, I think this is one of the better games of the weekend, really, when you come in. This was kind of one of those ones that was a shootout, but it was one of those ones where a team got up a little bit surprisingly. Another team made a comeback, looked like it was going to be their game. Then South Alabama makes a comeback because the Jaguars jumped out 14-0. Seemed like it was the Green Wave all after that. And then Jaguars come back and score 17 points in the final quarter and had a shot to tie this with the 2-point conversion that unfortunately failed. And then I think they even had the ball back one more time, I believe, after that. So they really had a chance to take this game at home. And just unfortunate they couldn't do it, because I'll tell you what, Tulane looked phenomenal against Northwestern, a Power 4 team last week. So had South Alabama been able to pull this off, would have been a monumental victory, not only because of who they beat, but this is kind of a regional rivalry that, has some history to it, that, Mobile and New Orleans, the Battle of Mardi Gras type of thing here. Who started it first? Who's going to claim it? So there was a little bit more heat to this more recent rivalry here, and would have been great to see the Sun Belt take this one, because that would have been one to kind of hang that. I don't think Tulane is a ranked team right now, especially after this performance, maybe, but I think they're a team that's probably receiving votes. So this would have been a really good one for Major Applewhite to come out on top. I was really impressed, and I said this before, I'm a big Bishop Davenport fan. From what I saw last year, I didn't think the drop-off from Gio Lopez to Davenport was all that big of a gap. And I think we're seeing that. 231 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And he also gets it done on the ground, going 12 carries for 63 yards and a touchdown. So they're fine at the quarterback position. And Kentrell Bullock, over the century mark, touchdown himself. 2 pretty good performances so far on the year. Viason, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. So they've got, a superstar at each position. Did they have enough of the rest of the wide receiver tight end group to kind of pick up any slack? Do they have a lot of depth at the running back position? Those are the questions when you get through the longevity of the season that are going to have to be answered. But I think South Alabama may surprise some people with where they end up in the West this year.
Well, and that brings up a point. You said, Tulane did look great against Northwestern, dismantled Northwestern. What do you think this says about South Alabama? Like, where do you think they end up in the landscape of the Sun Belt? Are they the real deal, you think?
Yes, I think they are the real deal. I mean, I think you're going to have to question defensively, right? I mean, they played a little bit closer of a game in week 1 versus an FCS opponent than you would have hoped to have seen. But they did come back, win that game in the end. They had their moments against Tulane where they let up, a good amount there in the middle section of the game, and they got to clean some of those things up. But yeah, I mean, I still think you've got enough talent to get stuff done here. I think this might be the year where, that Troy South Alabama game means more than it has in the couple past seasons, because one of those teams has been down, and that's kind of been South Alabama. But I think they could be the real deal, and it wouldn't surprise me to see Troy and South both towards the top of the West by the end of this year.
Yeah, Troy and South Alabama, they're going to play each other in 4 weeks.
Pretty early this year.
Yeah, pretty early on. It's going to be their second game, South Alabama's second game in conference. So it means quite a bit. And then I would say even more so is if they can get through Troy, they wrap up their season at Texas State. They are the send-off for the Sun Belt, for the Bobcats as they go to the Pac-12. So we'll be keeping an eye, obviously, on how South Alabama does. Keep tabs on that team. They head to Auburn next weekend. That game will be on the SEC Network just after noon kick. Big test for the Jags as they head into conference play the week after. Next one. This one did not live up to the hype. This one was the Clay Helton game. Clay Helton coming from USC gets left out in the cold. He basically becomes the scapegoat for USC, which is just wild because of the success that he did have at USC. Right. So then he takes over Georgia Southern. He finally gets a returning starting quarterback in J.C. French. This has got, Lincoln Riley versus Clay Helton, redemption written all over it, and it just never quite got off the ground for Georgia Southern.
No, they struggled mightily last week in that second half against Fresno, and they looked pretty similar. Again, this week, unfortunately. Now, this one was a bigger test. I think anybody would put Southern Cal above Fresno State in the pecking order, so that part's not necessarily a surprise, but you would have liked to have seen this one not get so out of hand. A 39-point victory for the Trojans in this one. I don't really know what to make of this. I mean, I don't think French played terribly, definitely didn't play great, didn't get a ton of help on the ground to help open up the passing game. So,
I'll tell you, I'll cut you off for a second and just take a look at the box score for USC. I mean, you have a major contributor in all three facets of the game. Jaden Mayava was incredible. He only had 16 completions. He threw for 412 yards. I mean, that is ridiculous. 4 touchdowns, no picks. Great performance from the USC quarterback. Waymond Jordan, 16 carries, 167 yards and a touchdown. You also have Eli Sanders, 8 carries, 52 yards, 2 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns on the ground in total. So you have a total of 8 touchdowns on the day for the Trojans. And you've got Mekhi Lemon, who's got 2 of those in the air, 158 yards on 4 catches. You got another guy, Jacoby Lane, big name in the younger name in the wide receiver conversation in the nation, 91 yards and a touchdown. This was just an offensive onslaught by USC, but that begs the question. I mean, this is not a Trojans team that has these tremendous expectations this year. That's why this game coming into it with the preseason was so appealing, because Georgia Southern was viewed as one of the top Sun Belt teams, right? Yep. They are one of the favorites in the East. It was coming into the season. It was Georgia Southern and JMU. Which one doesn't matter. It's going to be one of them. And then you see these first 2 games. I mean, everyone that you spoke to, Gata Talk, literally anybody that has any sort of idea of how Georgia Southern's supposed to be this year, they say that they are literally going back to what Ben James said. They are going to literally dog walk the Bulldogs of Fresno State, and the exact opposite happened. Now you get blown out by USC, which it's a power conference opponent, but at the same time, it's one that you're projected to have a chance in. What does this say about the state of Georgia Southern? Like, what's going on? Can they turn it around? And what do you think they need to work on heading into week 3?
I think they can turn it around. I think this was a tough test. You go all the way across the country. Luckily for them, they stay in between these 2 games, so they're not having to come back and forth too many times. But the problem that kind of specifically is, down for them right now, is a down thing for them right now, is they're allowing the big play, right? Look at the rushing plays, the longs, 36 yards, 41 yards, 21 yards, 19 yards. Then you look at the passing plays that were the long ones, 74, 53 yards, 61 yards. They cannot give up the big play. They continuously give up the big play. That's what's getting them burned. They're not looking bad on every down type of thing on defense, but it seems like it's stop them, slow them down, and boom, over the top for a big play, or right up the gut for a big chunk play on the ground. And they can't allow that type of thing to still continue. It's not necessarily easy to fix. I watched it happen all last year at App State, and again, they had that type of game this past Saturday. So it's not something that's easily fixed, but it can be fixed. And if you have the ball more often on the offensive side, your defense is a little bit fresher coming in, not having to try and, protect against those big plays as often. But I do like this thing by Artie Cat here. Coliseum is the stupidest stadium in college football, along with UNLV. Too enormous to fill up and looks empty every Saturday. And let's be honest, LA is just not a college football market, right? They're like a pro market. They're going to show up late. They're going to leave early. So it's just not a good mix. LA is a TV market, and that's what USC is going to claim ownership of.
To be fair, when USC's good, LA is a college football town. But yeah, I gotta say, it really was the defensive pressure for me. I think that that's what the Georgia Southern Eagles need to work on the most. Jaden Mayavat had all day to throw the football. No sacks, only 2 tackles for loss in the entire game for the Eagles defense. The pressure was they were just overmatched in the trenches.
Yeah.
That I think that's where Georgia Southern needs to look at, because you say, you could look at the rushing. OJ Arnold did not have the same game that he had in week 1.
No.
But JC French didn't play bad. He played relatively well. It was just the lack of resistance that USC had to deal with. I think that led to the defeat there. 59-20 is the final. Georgia Southern has some things to figure out. And speaking of teams that need to figure some things out, yes, that is a win for Coastal Carolina, but that is a 13-0 win over Charleston Southern. The Buccaneers now are on a 12-game losing streak. Even though 13-0, it feels like Coastal still somehow lost. And this is a Charleston Southern team that's never beaten an FBS opponent. Zach Capps right there says, was at the game. Entire offense is horrendous. Not just Morris. Defense is for real, though. And I'll get to the defense in a minute because I agree with Zach there. But for you, Dom, shutout victory, it's great. This is a game that was 3-0 heading into the fourth quarter. What is wrong in your eyes with this offense?
Artie says, come on, Yardbirds.
Beach chickens is what we prefer, Artie.
Beach chickens. I think the bottom line is, just like Marshall, you've got to figure out the quarterback position. And I think towards the end of that game, you started to figure it out. I don't think Morris is your guy. I think Ted Hudson is the guy. Now, has he gone for the whole game to know that for a fact? No. But he did have more success in a limited amount of time. Not necessarily statistically, because he didn't get enough game time to know that for a fact. But he did move the ball a little bit better when he was in. Teams seemed to respond a little bit more as well. Or is that the product of Charleston Southern finally being worn down from being on the field so much defensively? Not necessarily sure, but I think you got to lean Hudson going forward. You've got some good running backs who've moved the ball, some pretty good plays out of those guys. So you've got the ground game going to have success through the air and mix it up, and we're just not seeing it. I don't know if AJ Swan, App is the guy. 3 teams in 3 years. MJ Morris now in the exact same type of situation, 3 years and 3 teams. So these guys pan out all the time. Usually when you move around that much, you don't. But we'll have to see. Maybe it's just more time to gel. But I think Beck's on the hot seat now, right? I mean, TJ, you're probably seeing Coastal fans a little bit more on your timeline than I am. But I got to start thinking that people are getting a little restless there in Conway.
Coastal fans, for the most part, are upset. But just briefly, the difference between AJ Swan and MJ Morris is the fact that MJ Morris has 4 picks in 2 weeks. That's the big difference there. You talk about Beck being on the hot seat. I am a huge believer in you do not judge a head coach until they have 3 years of work. That being said, this is year 3. That being said, something needs to change. And I think it's more mental than anything. This is a team that Coastal Carolina was introduced to the national spotlight because of their ability to run the modified triple option. This was Jamie Chadwell's Coastal Carolina relied on the ground game. And because Grayson McCall is arguably one of the greatest option quarterbacks of this century, you have the ability to, go from a read option to a speed option, a read option to a bootleg, even a speed option into a running back pass at times. There were times where you would see that, mainly with Bryce Carpenter in at quarterback a couple of years ago. But this has, Tim Beck comes in and he wants to turn Coastal Carolina into more of a pro-style offense, which makes a lot of sense because Grayson McCall had dealt with injuries, and you don't want him to lower his shoulder and go down the middle anymore. That's fine. But when it didn't work and they go back to the option, and that revamped offense ends up winning Coastal Carolina a bowl game in Hawaii in Beck's first year, you would think that now losing McCall and going to Ethan Vasco, who is an option quarterback, that you would lean more into that. And Beck is from my observation, Beck is trying too hard to turn this into the air raid offense that he had at NC State. And that is just not working. Especially when you have guys like Dominick Nicely and Jalen John, who, when they get the ball and they lower their shoulder, they have the ability to create space and pick up chunk yards. They've got a ton of people in that running back room that can get the job done, and you can lean into the option game. I mean, what is the point of bringing in Grayson McCall as an offensive analyst if you're not going to have him teach the option? He's the guy. He's the guy that put Coastal on the map. He's the guy.
Yeah.
And as Zach said in that message, you've got an offensive coordinator who specializes in the air raid, and they throw screens. I don't think that this Coastal, I sincerely hope that Coastal has not shown their entire playbook. I don't think that they have. They've been very conservative in their play calling. But what I will say is that what they haven't shown yet needs to be a lot better. Because this is just, it was a win. It was a 2-score win. It felt like a loss. And, Tim Beck comes into the press conference after the game and he says he likes some of the things that he saw. Maybe the defense is something that you can point to. I think this is the most physical defense since that 2020-2021 team. But physicality only takes you so far. I think that there is some serious work that needs to be done in pass coverage. Pass coverage, when you're giving up chunks of yards, doesn't matter how physical you are. Sure, they're bringing people to the ground and they are forcing the stoppage of progression, but I don't know. There's a lot of things to figure out. And one more thing that I will say before I pass it back to you. MJ Morris, 3 interceptions, they go in a different direction. But it is a little troubling to see that Tad Hudson's in for multiple drives. They only let him throw the ball 5 times.
Right.
What are they seeing from Tad Hudson that is preventing them from allowing him to air it out? That's what I will then throw it back to you with. You can kind of take the hosting privileges for this one. There was a lot that I needed to say there.
I think you're just looking at plain and simple. And again, Coastal's only one of a number of examples in this conference right now where the coach doesn't necessarily trust a certain quarterback to throw the ball just yet, right? We talked about Saluka, talked about Turner maybe with Marshall or his backups, like Del Rio Wilson. Same thing with Hudson here maybe. We trust you to come in here and run the ball more than we do you to throw it. And is that because of what they've seen in practice? I don't know. I don't know if that's a design feature that they're trying to use. Like, all right, well, this is going to be our running quarterback, and this is going to be our throwing quarterback. But again, if you're using 2 guys like that, that means you don't have one. So you've got to get somebody to take over the reins and be the guy so your team knows who to trust and is kind of the guy going forward for the rest of the year. And if the injuries happen, then you just do next man up and take it how it comes. But you've got to have a clear leader on your offense. It's always got to be your quarterback. Can't be a running back, can't be a wide receiver. It's got to be a quarterback. So if they can lead, then you've got to give them the ability to air that ball out and see if they can lead by example on the field as well. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, my team came away with victory just like this. It felt more like a loss. It felt more like people were saying what happened instead of saying glad we won the game. I mean, like, yeah, glad you won the game. That we're not worried about that. We knew we were going to win the game. Now we're concerned with how little we won the game by. So I think Coastal, App State right here are very similar right now in fan bases and what they're thinking and what they're saying.
The other thing that I kind of want to come into, I just want to make sure that I'm getting this correct. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the right game. So I'm just scrubbing through this really quick. Yeah, you've got a serious issue in terms of clock management in this game. I don't know how close you were paying attention to this one, but Coastal Carolina going into the final quarter, the fourth quarter, up 3-0. They use all 3 of their timeouts in the third quarter. That is,
I didn't remember that aspect, but
that is insane. I don't know how you can possibly, at some point, even if it's just to get the team over, you didn't like the look. Like sometimes you're gonna have to eat a tackle for loss to keep a couple timeouts for the final quarter.
right.
Sometimes you're gonna have to eat a delay of game if you need to. Using 3 timeouts in the third quarter is ridiculous. That's just the last thing that I'll say about this. Yeah, this was an interesting look for Coastal Carolina. I think that they've got a lot to figure out before they host East Carolina, which is a team that usually puts a very physical and good football team out on the field. So Coastal has a lot to figure out. And this is a team that Tim Beck said coming into the season, probably the deepest team that he's had during his time in Conway. And his first team had Grayson McCall, Sam Pinckney, Reese White, Braden Bennett on it. I don't know. Do you think that he's got an accurate grip on where his roster's at, or do you think this is just a slow start to the season for the Shots?
Well, I would have, had you not put the schedule in front of me before the season, I thought I would have said Coastal was going to come out with a pretty decent record. As I went week by week, I started to say, man, this team could struggle because I don't think they have an easy schedule here, and I don't know if I trust them enough across the board yet. And I think we're seeing that. I'm still sticking with my Coastal may lose out on a bowl game type of season here. I know that's not what you want to hear and what Sean fans want to hear, but it's in the pudding so far.
But it is a very real possibility.
Yeah,
a lot of things to figure out with Coastal Carolina. Let's head to the final game of the slate. Raging Cajuns pull out the victory against McNeese, 34-10. Louisiana heads into halftime up 17-7. McNeese pulls within one score, but that fourth quarter is what did it for the Raging Cajuns. 17 unanswered points to finish out the game. Dom, scoreboard looks like a comfortable victory. This was anything but that. The entire way, McNeese is another FCS opponent that's given one of these Sunbelt teams a run for their money. What kind of trouble are they in with the loss of Walker Howard?
Yeah, it looks like big trouble. They have a true freshman quarterback in Daniel Beal who started the game. That was kind of known coming in because of when we found out Walker Howard was going to be out. We did see some time from Lunch Winfield, who I guess is considered number 2 right now. He was number 3 coming into the season. He didn't attempt to pass. He got in for 3 carries and only gained 2 yards. So yet again, this kind of situation with the quarterback, hey, he's going to kind of run the ball for us and not pass anything downfield, which kind of surprised me, right? You're got a close game in the fourth. Let this guy try and make a play here. All it was kind of a wildcat type of look and just get right up the gut and go for a couple of yards forward, fall forward type of thing. But Daniel Beal, I don't know what to make of him yet. He's a young kid, doesn't have a lot of experience. I guess pretty highly thought of. 14 to 22, only 86 yards, does have a touchdown. That QBR, though, at 31.2. So not really all that efficient. Not a runner. He had 3 carries for just 18 yards. So I just think they're hurting, man. They've had a couple injuries at the quarterback position over the past few years that have really hurt them and hindered them, especially in the Sun Belt Championship, as we know from last year. They need to figure it out. The good news is the identity of this team is on the ground. Bill Davis, Xylon Perry. Davis goes for 132 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Xylon Perry adds 94, so he almost gets over the century mark. They can control the clock because they can run the ball, but they're going to need to be a more complete offense to compete towards the top of this conference right now. I mean, if you had to put them up against Texas State right now, I'm favoring the Bobcats from what I've seen out of these two teams so far. Defensively, supposed to be pretty strong coming in. They haven't really blown me away there either. They haven't been awful or anything, but, just nothing really stands out statistically or when you watch the game that, like, wow, that defense is really, really good type of thing. McNeese, hasn't even been a top FCS team here these past couple of years. They used to be. They kind of fell off, and so a 34-10 victory over McNeese isn't really anything to write home about, especially, like you said, had to have that outpouring of 17 points in that fourth quarter to really steal this thing up.
Yeah, and one other thing that I will call to people's attention is the fact that I caught a vast majority of this game. There were plenty of times where Beal would drop back to pass, hit a receiver in the hands, and they'd drop it. There was, listening to the broadcast, apparently there was rain. It was a little bit of a wet condition. These passes were good enough to be caught. Not good enough to get yards after catch, but good enough to be caught. There were a couple overthrows, couple underthrows, but there were, as Daniel Beal, he goes 14 for 22. So we're looking at 8 passes. I would say probably 4 or 5 of them that I can remember just off the top of my head were in the receiver's hands. So that is something to take into consideration. That being said, the 14 passes that he did complete only go for 86 yards. They're averaging 3.9 yards per pass. They're throwing these little short, speed outs, quick crosses over the middle. It is really the rushing that gave the Cajuns the win in this one, especially Bill Davis, 19 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big performance for Davis. But I don't think this is in the same situation as Coastal Carolina wins the game, but it feels like a loss. I think this feels like a win for Louisiana, especially having lost Walker Howard. But now it's figuring out what you're going to do at that quarterback position, how you're going to incorporate Beal to his strengths. That's the biggest thing with a head coach is how do you adjust? You don't have Walker Howard anymore. Now you have Daniel Beal. So how do you build the offense around him to have a successful 2025?
Yeah. I wouldn't mind seeing more out of Lunch Winfield just to see if he could be the guy. I mean, this is a kid who's been on the roster for at least 3, if not 4 years now. I can't remember if he's.
This is a guy that you're really campaigning for. You're really campaigning for Lunch.
I've seen a couple plays that just like, man, this guy's electrifying, right? And I've heard how much his teammates really love the guy. He could be a natural born leader in that locker room. And if he does well at the quarterback position, now this team feels different. It responds different. It plays better. So I really think that they should test this out if Beal's not continuing to get it done. And maybe that's kind of what they were doing at the end there a little bit, giving Lunch a couple carries and just seeing what would happen. If he breaks off a 40-yard run, hey, we're getting him again and give him another look to see if he could be as successful this second time around. But we'll have to see what transpires as we move forward and get close to week 3 here coming up now. Artie Cat does say Lafayette did win. It's later in the game when they pulled away. Yeah, absolutely. And McNeese did give them a lot of problems. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Is just another FCS opponent that people probably thought, maybe we should pull away from. Unfortunately, we have to say that maybe the Sun Belt from top to bottom just isn't quite as good as we had hoped or thought it would be going into the season. But you know what? We've got another great slate of games in week 3 coming up. So, tides can turn, things can change, but we'll have to see, because not the greatest of starts here.
Some big games on this week 3 slate. You've got South Alabama going to Auburn. We talked about before. That's a top 25 game. You have the Iowa State Cyclones, the 14th ranked Iowa State Cyclones, going to Arkansas State. They're going to be in Jonesboro for that game. You've got Louisiana going up against Missouri, another top 25. You've got Virginia Tech, who's coming off of 2 really tough first weeks. They're going to be playing Old Dominion, who's a team that we're very high on. So that could be a big one. Yeah, I know, Artie. I need to stop talking at some point today. But then, the big one from the beginning of the season, 10:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday, Texas State going to Phoenix to take on the Sun Devils of Arizona State. That one should be exciting. That's just a quick sneak peek of some of the bigger matchups. Full Saturday slate here in week 3.
Yep, and we got a conference game between App State and Southern Miss. So we got some conference stuff starting up, and can't wait to get into it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to go to this concert tonight. TJ's going to rest those vocals, get a little hot tea. Are you a hot tea guy?
I'm not much of a hot tea guy. I'm more of an iced tea guy, but that it doesn't help from what I hear.
Probably not.
No.
But yeah, thanks for tuning in, watching, and we will see you on the week 3 preview. See you guys later.